I have needs and wants and desires. I'm a fully formed adult, you know. I think that takes maturity versus just acting like you don't want anything and you're just perfect the way you are and you could live in a hut with nothing and never go on a trip and never have a baby and never get a puppy or whatever you want, you know. Don't suppress those desires in order to appear low maintenance or in order to appear like a perfect wife, because all wives have desires, so express them. Hello friends, feminine family, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin and I run the blog called Mrs. Midwest. Today we are going to be opening up the topic of marriage. Now, is this video exclusively for married people? No, I think a lot of this can be helpful for people who one day hope to be married, people who are engaged, dating, whatever, or maybe you'll just at least find it entertaining to go through the mistakes that I have made in marriage. So I've been married. This summer it'll be 6 years. We have 2 kids. We've been together 7 years. And I have grown and changed a lot as a person. I am not the same person I was when I met my husband. Praise the Lord. Thank you for that. A lot of it is just the natural progression of getting older, more mature, becoming a mother. A lot of that is the sanctification process of being a Christian. But I know a lot of it is the sanctification process of marriage and being married, as well as being married to someone you deeply admire, someone who just kind of like makes you a better person. So today I wanted to go through some mistakes I have made in marriage, how I've changed, and I don't know, maybe some of this will be helpful to you. Maybe nobody will be able to relate, but either way, let's dive in. So, mistakes I've made during marriage. Nothing like crazy, like cheating, spending thousands of dollars, or hurting someone very deeply, you know, not mistakes like that. Small mistakes, but I think even if you are making small mistakes in your marriage, it can have drastic effects, because some of these patterns of behavior reflect on just your general dynamic. They affect your happiness in day-to-day life. And then one day too, they might like affect your children and your children's happiness. So the first mistake, trying to do everything perfectly and trying to do everything myself. So I think in my mind, especially when I began staying home, you guys will see this especially in the beginning of my online homemaking content. I was all about making homemaking like my career, making it, you know, becoming the best homemaker I could be. And I think that turned into a bit of an obsession with being perfect, as well as not letting my husband help me, like not letting him step in, not letting him like do any of the chores, not letting him assist me. Because I think what a lot of young homemakers, myself included, can get wrapped up into is it's almost like you feel guilty for staying home, because it's such a privilege, it's such a gift, it's such a wonderful place to be, especially before kids. I think sometimes in our minds we want to like prove our value, prove to our husbands and to the world that it's worth it for us to stay home, that it's a net benefit. And I think that can be positive. It can drive you to be productive as a homemaker, to not be lazy, to be disciplined. But I think it can also become negative when you're not letting your husband help you, you're not letting him support you, and you're also like wearing yourself thin. Trying to be perfect no matter what field you're in, whether you're at home, in a career, whether it's with your body, your health, your relationships, status, money, whatever, trying to be perfect is never going to work out. It's never going to make you feel better, and it's always going to lead to burnout and exhaustion. And that's what happened to me. So I was trying to be perfect, you know, making YouTube videos and being online, trying to be perfect with my like cleaning, trying to be perfect with cooking and my looks and everything. And because of that, I just got really like worn out. And by the time I was beginning my first pregnancy with my son, Bodhi, I took a ginormous YouTube break. And that's when I kind of began to learn the value of slowing down and not having to work so hard and just letting my husband help me. I once heard from another influencer online, a YouTuber, one of the things she did in her marriage was never saying no to her husband's offer to help her. And I remember at the time I thought it was absurd advice. I thought it was like crazy. I was like, why would you, let him help you? You're a homemaker. It's your job. And I've since eaten my words, my thoughts, and I've realized the benefit of letting my husband help me, letting him offer me assistance, is that I get to just chill out a little bit more, and I get to have that vulnerable interaction of someone coming in and supporting me. I think sometimes our pride can get ripped up in homemaking, in being a wife, even just being a wife at home, where you want to do it all, you want to do perfect, you want to prove your value as a wife, you want to show him what a good wife you are, you want to show the world. But when your pride gets wrapped up in that and you don't let him help you, you don't let yourself be vulnerable. You don't ever have a moment where it's like, hey, I can't do this by myself, or I would love support, or I'm feeling tired, I'm getting worn out. Yeah, being a homemaker is, before kids especially, it's like a nice, on the easier side job. So I don't want to admit that I need help. But there's beauty in the vulnerability of letting your husband help you, letting him come in and support you, letting him, be part of your world in a sense, and helping you to lead, helping lead you through life and through the relationship. And if you have a traditional relationship the way we do, where it's like he leads, I follow kind of situation, biblical marriage, blah, blah, blah. If you're living that out, but you're never accepting help, it creates a barrier. And it's so wonderful now that I accept any and all offers of help. I never expect it. I usually don't go out of my way to ask for it unless I really, really need it. But now I'll accept help even if I don't super need help with something. He wants to help me with laundry. I let him. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't tally okay, well, he works this many hours and he brings in this income and I only do this, so therefore he cannot help me with laundry. I don't do that anymore. I just say, oh, that would be lovely. And in doing so, there's intimacy that's formed there. And I realize how much a husband loves to be your hero, how much he loves to step in and aid you. And if you're constantly saying no, if you're constantly I can do this on my own, don't be surprised if you end up one day exhausted, doing everything yourself, and then becoming resentful. Why does he never help me? Well, did you accept help? And this doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You don't have to say yes all the time, but you also don't have to be trapped in that place of being that wife that does everything. You can start small and it'll create a tidal wave of change. So one big mistake was always trying to be perfect, always trying to do it myself, never accepting help. That has changed, and I'm so glad. I think in a huge way it changed when I had my delivery of my oldest son, Bodhi. And if you've seen my birth stories, you know how traumatic it was. And when they wanted me to hold the baby after he was born, I was barely conscious, I was not myself. I was so traumatized. I don't even really remember a ton about that day in my life, but they gave the baby to my husband, and he was the one who gave him his first, he gave him a bottle. He gave him his first feed on earth. He was the first person to do skin to skin, and he took over mothering kind of for me in that really vulnerable time where I was a broken person. And I'm tearing up. Oh my goodness. Allowing him to step in and just admitting the truth, I can't handle this. I need you to help me. It set off something in our marriage and in my life that I've never looked back from. And it has just been so good and so bonding because he helped me so much in that moment. And I realized how many times in our marriage he really did want to help me with things, but I was no, I can do this. I got it. I'm little Miss Betty Crocker over here. And after that birth, after that delivery, it just changed where it's I let him help me, especially with the kids, especially with parenting. I'm not that mother where it's I do it all. I'm baby wearing while cooking a pot of food and my toddler's nearby and I'm handing him food. If my husband's around, I accept those offers of help, and it makes me feel so supportive. It makes me feel so grateful for him. And that's something I didn't anticipate or even think about. But when he helps me and when I invite that help in, it makes me feel so cared about and so loved by him that I feel being more affectionate. I feel I'm so taken care of in our relationship. My needs are met, and that is just such a blessing. So number one mistake, not accepting help. Number two, it's kind of similar, but it is different. And this is not valuing independence or relaxation. I used to get so fussy when my husband would spend his free time with anybody other than me. I know that sounds really vain, really self-centered, but I'm human and sinful, and yes, I struggled with self-centeredness, still do, but especially in the beginning of our marriage, I wanted all his time, and I would feel offended if he'd want to like go off and do his own thing. And I had a really hard time like I would feel resentful if he'd go off hunting, or if he would go like want to do something with the guys on the weekend or something. And it wasn't even all the time, like, let that be clear. He spends so much time with me, but it was like I wanted more, or I wanted him to like spend all his time with me. And what I changed is realizing like he can't be my world. He can't be everything to me, and I also need to value relaxation as well. I decided to take my cues from him. So he has his relaxation time, he has his work time, he has his chore time, he has his time with his friends and family and me, and I decided to model my life the same way. And I've gotten so much more joy and satisfaction instead of feeling resentful at home while he does something, or being like upset that he's chilling when I'm cleaning the kitchen. So I started valuing relaxing and having that serene time as a woman, indulging in my femininity and in my hobbies and in just, things that make me happy, like my walks around town. You guys know I love my walking. And instead of taking every opportunity to like tinker in the kitchen or cook or do laundry or my duties, or taking all of my free time for him, I started to plan my life in a way where it was like, okay, I'm going to go to the library on this afternoon, and I'm going to go for a walk here, and I'm taking the kids for this play date, and I fit my husband into that schedule as well. But my life and time doesn't revolve around him, and this is so important because it cuts out any resentment, because I don't feel like I'm just sitting at home while you're off doing this fun stuff, or I create my whole schedule to be around your free time and you don't care about me. Instead of doing that, it's like we both have the things we like to get done. He does jujitsu, he has his like time sometimes with friends, or like his workouts, his lifting is really important to him. And instead of being resentful that he's doing that stuff, I make sure my needs are met. So it's like, okay, I wanted to go for a walk today. How can he help me make that happen? Or I want to go on a date this month. Let's do it. Just being more straightforward, but also just more independent. And I think homemakers, stay-at-home moms, sometimes we can fall into the trap. Like a lot of people like always tell us like your life revolves around your husband, you're a leech, you're a barnacle. I don't believe that's true, but I also do think that can be a pitfall as a homemaking wife, where your social life and your everything revolves around your husband, and he's the one leaving the home and you're not. And I really think it's important to create a life where you have friends, you have a social life, you have things that make you happy outside of your husband, because that brings so much joy. I am a more joyful wife, and I don't feel resentful toward him, and it's much more balanced, and it's healthy, and it's not codependent. It's where we are both getting our needs met, we're both working out, we're both enjoying nature, we're both having social time, and we have time together, a lot of time together. And the great thing about this is the time we have together, we're not spending arguing about you didn't spend time with me or blah, blah, blah. We're just enjoying each other. So I really, really think that prioritizing things like a clean kitchen or a clean laundry room over like kicking back and relaxing would make me be resentful when he could kick back and relax. And then I just realized, like, partly through the book The Empowered Wife, but also just through life experience, nothing is stopping me from kicking back and relaxing once in a while, or going for a walk, or going to a coffee shop. I've seen advice before that really, really, really bothers me online, and it's aimed at homemakers and stay-at-home moms, where it's like shaming them for like leaving the house or wanting to go shopping for an afternoon or grab lunch with a friend, and that they should be home, and home is where the heart is, and their children need them. And that advice is awful in my opinion, and it's really harmful, because I think it's so dehumanizing to say a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom can't leave her house without feeling guilty, or she should feel guilty for going shopping or grabbing lunch with a friend. That's so dehumanizing and wrong. You are not a slave to your house. You're not a slave to your husband. Sure, if you're going out all the time and you're being irresponsible with money, you're being irresponsible with your kids, you never see your family, or you're like being awful, sure, that's bad. But there's nothing wrong with penciling in time in your week to fit your workout in, to fit a little bit of like me time, a treat at a coffee shop, enjoying social time with friends, because that helps you build up your life, your independence. It helps make your life more full. So you're not just revolving around like the cliche things people accuse us of like the kitchen, the laundry room, the kids, etc. So building up my life as more than my husband, valuing relaxation and like not being so obsessive about how he spends his time, instead of focusing on myself and staying in my own lane, has brought me so much more happiness. And I really think the key to a happy marriage is being happy yourself. And so the more you can do that, the more you can fill up your own life. I really think that's just beneficial to overall joy. All right, the third mistake, this is super common. You're not alone if you do this. It takes maturity to grow past it, and it's expecting my husband to read my mind. I grew up in a very passive-aggressive household, so instead of stating the needs, it was like, read my mind, and if you read it wrong, you're in trouble, but I'm not going to tell you you're in trouble. I'm just going to give you the silent treatment and a dirty look and avoid you, whatever. So I had a bit of an uphill battle when it came to learning about communication in marriage. I had such a hard time voicing my needs and voicing my desires and voicing my wants, because it felt wrong to have those things or to like state them explicitly. Like I felt like I was asking for too much or whatever. Since then, I've realized that it's healthy to communicate openly. It's healthy. It's normal to have needs, desires, wants, whatever. You know, even if it's like, I don't want to cook tonight. I would like to go out to eat. I would like to go on a date with you. I would like to go on a vacation. There's nothing wrong with stating these needs versus sitting around and waiting like, oh, when's he going to take the hint that I want to go to Florida? Like talking about how your best friend went to Florida over and over, like he might not pick it up, and you're going to grow resentful. And a lot of these mistakes I'm discussing in this video are going to surround reducing resentment, because resentment is the number one thing that like eats at marriages and disrupts intimacy. So as I've said on my channel, and this was especially more of a problem kind of like pre-YouTube in that first like 1 or 2 years of marriage when I was still learning how to be a wife. I've always said on my channel, if you can't get over something, then you need to bring it up. And if you can't bring it up, then you need to get over it. So for example, something that might be too small to bring up would be like you being annoyed that he left his water cup downstairs. If you bring that up, you might kind of sound like, I don't know, a harsh roommate. But if you can't get over the fact that he keeps leaving his water cups downstairs and it's making you hate him behind his back or be resentful, then bring it up. So it's really important to kind of judge your issues in your relationship and notice when you're harboring something and decide, do I bring this up? If I can't bring it up, I'll get over it. So think about things like that, you know, recognize when you're harboring issues and never expect your husband to read your mind. Always kind of assume he doesn't know exactly what you want unless you tell him. It's important to be honest though without expectations. So he might not always agree with you. He might not always like agree with what you want or what you want to do, but you will feel better if you at least express your desires and if you express what you want. And so instead of like being resentful for 10 years that he never took you to Florida, I think it's better to just say, hey, I would like to go to Florida. I don't know why I'm using that as an example. I don't want to go to Florida right now, but it's just like a wife who wants to go on a vacation. That's a very common thing. So if you want to go on a vacation and he's not bringing it up, it's okay to say, hey, I would love to go on a vacation sometime. Maybe it's not in the budget right now, but let's just keep that in mind for the future. He'll then have that in his mind and he'll at least know what you want. And I really think that's so important. It's so important to give our husbands a game plan, to know their wives and to know your desires and what you want. So then maybe if it's in his power, he can make that happen. And if not, he can at least like, you know, maybe you guys can go to Nashville, Tennessee, whatever. Like I'm just using this example, like halfway down. Maybe you can go on a weekend away or you can have some sort of getaway, but he can at least like address your desires and needs so that you're not resenting him in the background. And I've actually gotten very good at this. I have a whole blog post about this. It is inspired by the Empowered Wife book that I always talk about. But I wanted a new sofa. And I was really frustrated that I still had my $10 thrifted mushy sofa from college. And it was all fun and games to like, oh look, I slip covered it. I made it really cute. But at the end of the day, I really wanted like an adult sofa. Like I didn't want to be going into my 30s with this like gross sofa in my main living room. We have a small house. It's our main sofa. So I expressed that desire, and instead of resenting him that he didn't just like up and say, hey, let's go furniture shopping, I expressed that desire. He made it happen. It's amazing. I love our living room now, but I just think it's really important to acknowledge your desires. And I think too, a lot of homemaking wives, we feel so grateful to be at home. It might feel like we have to make it up for him, that he's giving us so much by letting us live this lifestyle. Like, well, then I couldn't ask for a new dining set, or I couldn't ask for a weekend away, or blah, blah, blah. I'm already so blessed. But if you know you're going to be resentful, like that you don't get those things, or longing for them, or really, really wish, and it makes you kind of mad at him, you need to address that desire with him. Don't expect him to read your mind. And don't be afraid to have these desires. It's okay to want things in life, and to want to build memories and experiences and have like things in your house. So that was a mistake I made in marriage. And now, like, the wonderful thing too is, like, once you kind of accept the maturity that it takes to bring these things up, when you accept, like, I have needs and wants and desires, I'm a fully formed adult, you know, I think that takes maturity versus just acting like you don't want anything and you're just perfect the way you are, and you could live in a hut with nothing and never go on a trip and never have a baby and never get a puppy, or whatever you want, you know. Don't suppress those desires in order to appear low maintenance, or in order to appear like a perfect wife, because all wives have desires, so express them. All right. My fourth piece of advice, or not fourth piece of advice. All right, the fourth mistake I made in marriage was thinking that it was all hard work and duty. I hear this all the time, especially like from newly married people, where it's like, marriage is so, like, it's hard work, it's showing up, it's duty, like, we got it, it's a duty to love each other, it's action, it's not words. Like fighting the good fight, and all this imagery around marriage where it's like Satan's coming in and he's like trying to attack your marriage, and it's so hard. And I really feel like, yes, there is an element where marriage is hard work. Long-term relationships with anybody, especially someone you are sharing the same space with, raising children with, sharing a sex life with, sharing finances with, that is as intimate as it gets. There is going to be difficulties with that, because you're two separate people living as one person, essentially. Two separate people with two separate needs, male and female. There is so many differences even just in that alone, male-female relationships. So yes, there is an element of difficulty. But sometimes I think the narrative that marriage is difficult and hard work and duty can really like get into your head and suck a lot of the fun out of it, and the satisfaction and the joy of living with your best friend and building a life with your companion, your chosen life companion, your family. And I just think that narrative too, where it's like, we're fighting for this, it just like makes it feel like you're not just fighting for this, like I'm fighting. I think sometimes it gets blurry where it's like, I'm fighting for you, but also I'm fighting you. I think that a lot of the people who use that type of lingo around marriage have high conflict marriages, and they have high conflict lifestyles. And I come from, like I've said on my channel, and I'm like, I come from a high conflict background. And so I was really used to that like expression and that concept that marriage is hard work. And I think I approached marriage, especially my first year, like, this is like gonna be so intense and like hard. Since then, I've totally chilled out. I've changed my perspective on it. I've read like the book, The Empowered Wife. I've taken a look at people's marriages whom I admire. And I don't view it that way anymore. Yes, there are arguments, there are like hard times, but I don't view like the actual marriage as like this like hard thing I'm fighting against or for, fighting blah blah blah. I just remove that concept entirely, and instead I think of marriage as a blessing, and I think of my husband as a blessing, and I think of marriage as a gift. And when I think about marriage, and if I'm feeling a little low, I'll go through my gratitudes about what I'm grateful for with marriage, the things that marriage has brought into my life that have made me so grateful, the fun things, the wonderful things, because I think the negative can sometimes like rise up and overshadow the positive. And I know this even as an influencer. Some, like, just as a small example, I'll get like 85 comments that are so supportive, so loving, so wonderful, or even neutral, and then there'll be one comment or two comments that are like super mean. And you know, obviously you know where this is going. What overshadows the 85 positive comments? The two super mean things. I think the same thing can happen in marriage, where like one negative interaction or negative day or whatever situation can overshadow like all the positive. And I think that, again, that lingo and that concept that marriage is hard work, I'm fighting, blah, 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 can really, again, illuminate and put a spotlight on the hard, tough parts of marriage instead of spotlighting and being grateful for and enjoying the good and the positive. All right, the final piece of advice kind of bookends what I just said, but that is not piece of advice, it's a mistake I made. Okay, so the final mistake I made was listening to people's advice whose marriages I did not want to emulate. And then I stopped doing this since, but this was a mistake I made. I think I would see like intense marriage advice online and I would be like, whoa, that's so convicting. And I would like want to apply it and I wouldn't really consider the source. And that is something I've totally changed in my life. Now I do not take relationship advice from anybody unless I would want their marriage or I would want to emulate a part of their marriage. And this is why the Empowered Wife book and podcast, not just the book, it's very important to do both at the same time. That's why that has been so influential on me, because I love the marriages, especially in the podcast. There's an interview per episode of a woman whose life has been transformed through the book and her marriage has been transformed. And hearing about these marriages, like the marriages they were living out, I was like, I want in on that. That sounds amazing. And that's why I started doing the book. It's also why I stopped listening to certain advice, especially like the people where they're like, marriage is hard work, do your wifely duty. Like, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that women should be trapped at home and should feel guilty for leaving the home. I don't agree with people who think husbands shouldn't help change diapers or be there for their kids. I don't agree with like all of this advice that really puts an emphasis on female suffering. Just like put in the hard work, do your thing, female suffering. I really now only like listen to advice or try to emulate people where it's like they have so much going for them or they feel really joyful or I would want their marriage. You know, there's this one girl that always pops up on my For You page on Instagram and she's always posting like frustrating things her husband does, like, oh, he comes home from work and he goes straight to the kitchen to do the dishes and he doesn't like connect with me, or he goes to the store and he asks what I want from the store, if I need anything from the store, and that's frustrating because it means I have to inventory the kitchen in my head. And she's always complaining about things he does. And one or two videos of hers, I felt like, oh, that's, you know, interesting, that point she made, or I really like what she said there. And then after watching a lot of that content, I kind of just pulled back and I realized like, this person seems deeply unhappy and their marriage also seems deeply like complicated and not something I want. So I'm gonna not listen to this advice. It seems pretty miserable. And I know that's like kind of a simple concept, but I think sometimes we can get wrapped up in advice that might like speak to us without considering the source. And I really think it's important to just consider, you know, the people you're listening to. I think this goes for anything, you know, are you listening to someone who's giving you like beauty or fashion advice, but they don't look their best themselves, or diet advice, but they're not in great shape? The same goes for marriage advice. So many people give marriage advice and they don't have like a marriage that is worth emulating. And so do I think my marriage is worth emulating? Kind of. I'm really happy. My husband's really happy. We have a lot of joy. We have our mutual faith. We're building a life together. Is that because I'm perfect? No. It's because God and also just the effort I've put in, and also like learning and being humble and realizing the pride I brought into marriage, especially in the beginning, like hindered me from growing as a wife, and it hindered me from experiencing all the joy. You know, partly why I take so much advice from the Empowered Wife is because, like I said, those are the marriages I just think sound so good. These women are relaxed. They're going on vacation. They're happy. They're doing their hobbies. They have friends. They have sexual intimacy. They're desired. And is it because they all look like beauty queens and they're all 22 and svelte and gorgeous with 6-figure careers? No, it's because of the dynamics that they've shifted in their marriage and the way they've learned how to respect, you know, in a way that husbands understand. That's what's transformed their lives, and that's why I take that advice. So yeah, that's, I think, 4 or 5 mistakes I've made since becoming a wife. I hope this was helpful to you guys. If you have mistakes you've made that you've since fixed, leave your tips below. Also, all marriages are different because all people are different, all personalities are different. So a dynamic that works for one person may not work for you, your lifestyle, where you are, whatever, your season. So if you have different advice, leave that below as well, because it could be helpful to someone who is more similar to you and like doesn't relate with me as much. The comment section is extremely vital and helpful and fruitful for a lot of people. So leave your advice below as well. And of course, I missed so much. I've made many mistakes in marriage, but those are the ones that I think are the most important. So thank you for watching. If you're interested in more relationship, marriage, romance content, I have a lot of that on my channel. Check it out. Like the video. It does help other people find my channel. Subscribe if you haven't, and send this to your friends and family, anybody who might be interested or benefit. Don't forget to check out my written blog. I've been back on there over the past month or so. I have some content on Instagram as well, but in general, I hope you have a wonderfully blessed and lovey-dovey week, my beautiful sisters.